He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin. This is the best of Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Levin. It is the Friday before the Liberty Project is launched next week. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Look, we can moan and groan till we're blue in the face. President had one of his Castro-like press conferences today, went on for an hour, and he said essentially nothing. We do have some audio of it, although I'm not going to overdo it because it was utterly monotonous. But there were a few tidbits in there that I would like to present to those of you who work for a living and weren't able to watch television or listen to the radio during the course of his Castro-like press conference. But I want to ask you a question. If the President of the United States were to use his executive powers unconstitutionally, to give millions of people amnesty, not just this DREAM Act that he pulled, what could we possibly do about it? Well, I want you to get ready for this. This is from the National Journal, Fawn Johnson. Immigration reform activists aren't supposed to talk publicly about a Plan B. They can't or won't answer questions from the media about what they'll do if no bill passes this year to legalize the undocumented population. But as August wears on and there's no clear sense of what the House will do on immigration, I'll get to that later. Some are starting to speak out. There are groups that are for immigration reform no matter what. Then there are groups like us, grassroots. We have the other track, said Adelina Nichols, the executive director of the Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights. The other track is Barack Obama. This caught my attention. The idea behind the other track, or Plan B, is to freeze the current undocumented population in place through an administrative order, give them work permits, and hope for a better deal under the next president with the hope that he or she is a Democrat. It's a significant gamble, but some advocates, particularly those outside the Washington legislative bartering system, argue it's better than what they stand to see under the legislation being discussed now. Many advocates have been discussing Plan B quietly for months, but they have kept a disciplined public message solely focused on supporting a comprehensive immigration bill in Congress. Even if they're uncomfortable with some of the bill's provisions, advocates don't want to appear fractured before a group of politicians who are wary about voting for anything that gives unauthorized immigrants legal status. The Obama administration is different. It has already flexed its muscle and shown that it is willing to exert authority to stop the deportation of hundreds of thousands of undocumented youth through its Deferred Action Program announced last year. The immigration community argues there's no reason this administrative authority cannot expand further to include other low-priority candidates for deportation, such as parents of dreamers or parents of children who are citizens because they were born here, people who are employed, people who are caregivers, and on and on and on. The same advocates who now are pushing Congress for an immigration overhaul were pushing the administration then for the Deferred Action Program for undocumented youths who were brought to the country as children. Once it finally happened, it worked like a charm. To date, the Homeland Security Department has approved some 365,000 applications. And ladies and gentlemen, they've done this without statutory authority. The same legal reasoning for not seeking deportation of unauthorized immigrants, a.k.a. illegal aliens. There's no safety-related reason to do so. Applies to other non-criminal aliens. Immigration analysts argue. Politically, all Obama needs is proof that Congress can't get the job done. I'm just reading the National Journal article. That could happen in a matter of months with the Republican-led House still unsure of how it will deal with the undocumented population. Meanwhile, The immigrant advocacy community has a host of complaints about the Senate bill that was passed in June, which would provide a tangled, treacherous 13-year path to citizenship for immigrants here illegally. It would also double the Border Patrol and require all employers to electronically check their workers to make sure they have proper papers. Can't have that. Even the Senate bill doesn't go far enough, ladies and gentlemen. Activists fear the Senate bill would militarize the border. Oh, that phrase, militarize the border. Such that no one could live there without constantly being stopped and asked for a passport. Oh, is that what it's about? They fear it'll drive undocumented immigrants who don't qualify for legalization further underground. They have a hard time saying that they enthusiastically support it. See, folks, you got to really pay attention to this. Because what's being pushed here is the complete evisceration of our nation state, of our sovereignty. These radical ethnic front groups, many of whom are supported by foreign consulates, they do not want border security, period. They want the ability to move in and out of this country at will. Dual citizenship, tri-citizenship, it doesn't much matter. And even politics aside, this is how you eat the heart and soul of a nation, because it ceases to be a nation. We tentatively support it, that is the Senate bill, but our concern is the bill is only going to get worse. We're not committed to continuing to support it, said Kate Woomer Dieters, a staff attorney at the Immigrant Rights Project for the North Carolina Justice Center. There must be trillions of these little hack groups. It's divisive to the community, kind of pitting needs against each other. I can't say we have a real position on this, said Juanita Molina, executive director of the Humane Borders, a group that has tracked deaths along the Arizona border with Mexico for 12 years. Most activists for immigration reform have been so wrapped up in getting legislation through the Senate, they haven't had time to look up and see what's down the road. They're doing so now, though. We're saying, what if? What are the next steps? If we come to a crossroads, what are the next strategies? The next talking point, said Lizette Escobedo, Communications and Development Director of the Latino group Mi Familia Vota. Even I know what that means. My family votes. Our groups on the ground are seeing this as a new challenge, and when you get a new challenge, you just need to turn up the heat. Now, folks, the Republicans are caving everywhere on this immigration issue. And they're working very closely with Chuck Schumer and the radical leftist Gutierrez. They have a plan in place to piecemeal this Senate bill, essentially, and eventually get it to the conference committee where Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer will take control of the thing. But should that not work, somehow, some way, even with both parties supporting it, Obama has a plan B. And Obama intends to do, by executive fiat, exactly what he did for those 365,000 illegal aliens. They're not all children, by the way. Under the DREAM Act, some were brought here as children. And he intends to do it for millions of others, at least for a year's time, or more, so they can get another Democrat president or another Democrat Congress with a Democrat president. And then that's that. This is an extremely radical undertaking. It is very important to understand this. The left will do anything to accomplish its objectives. And even when it accomplishes its objectives, it then changes them and makes them more and more radical. And they never stop. Did you hear what the woman said? If we don't get what we want by legislation, then we'll fight like hell and get it another way. This is what I'm saying to you about our agenda. We need to be resolute. We need to have groups all over this country, Tea Party groups and other groups, who fight with resilience, who fight strategically, who are unceasing in the cause of liberty and constitutionalism. That's the whole point of my book, The Liberty Amendments. Obama will not accept defeat. Obama views himself as a gift from God Almighty himself, and he knows that his tenure is limited, and he's going to do everything he can to advance the agenda. And who the hell's going to stop him? Well, that's the other point of my book. How do we stop this? How do we stop this? If you expect Boehner and Cantor to stop it, you're wrong. They're participating in it. If you expect McConnell and the others to stop it, you're wrong. They're participating in it. Yes, we can fight in Republican primaries, and we must. Yes, we can bring lawsuits, although the court is hopeless, but we must. We must fight everywhere we can. But we're not fighting everywhere we can. Not even close. And I'll explain further as soon as I return.
Mark Levin. You're listening to the best of the Mark Levin Show.
So what do we do, ladies and gentlemen? What do we do when a president of the United States conducts himself in an unlawful manner, when in fact he is the one who is supposed to ensure that the law is enforced properly, legitimately in the executive branch? What do we do when Congress legislates in ways that are far outside the Constitution, like with Obamacare? What do we do? Well, I'll tell you what we do, because I've had enough of it. And I don't care what the ruling class thinks and the governing masterminds, and I don't care what the French Republicans think and the former Bush aides and the others, the woe is me, but don't do anything crowd. That doesn't fly anymore. I just told you about these groups that number in the thousands all over the country, in our towns, in our states, national groups, that are constantly organizing against us, that are constantly strategizing against us. If they can't win at the ballot, then they believe that they can have a president of the United States issue laws by fiat. And if that doesn't work, they go to court. They do not stop, and they're not going to. Now, should we surrender to this? I think we should not surrender to this. And I've been thinking long and hard about this. And if somebody has better ideas than I do, then damn it, come forward and present them once and for all. Now, we've talked about the convention process, and I'm going to talk about that at great length early next week when my book is released, The Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic. And that's exactly what we're talking about, restoring the American Republic. Since when can a president of the United States defy the Constitution, defy Congress, the will of the people, and impose his own will on us? Since never. It's lawlessness. Now, let's just say for a moment, if a president of the United States does what Obama is planning to do with this Plan B, I'm just using this as one example. There are many. And that is, if Congress doesn't give the president what he wants, then he will, by fiat, institute what he believes would be useful to him and his party and so forth. Amnesty for millions of more people until they get another Democrat president, in hopes that they get Hillary next election cycle. Well, folks, that would have to be done through a department, the Department of Homeland Security. And the economic impact on this country of doing something like that would be billions and billions of dollars. When you take in consideration direct and indirect costs, education, health care, entitlements, just on and on and on. Well, one of the amendments I propose is as follows. I'm not going to read all of it, but I'm going to read Section 2. It's on Chapter 6. Again, I'm not supposed to do this till next week, but so what? It's just a few days away. all executive branch regulations, because that is what this would entail. A presidential fiat is an executive branch rule or regulation. All executive branch regulations exceeding an economic burden of $100 million, as determined jointly by the Government Accountability Office and the Congressional Budget Office, shall be submitted to a permanent joint committee of Congress, hereafter the Congressional Delegation Oversight Committee, for review and approval to their implementation. So here's the point. A president and departments and agencies of the executive branch can no longer simply issue rules and regulations and fiats that have an enormous impact on this society without any recourse whatsoever. And because Congress has delegated this authority to the executive branch unconstitutionally, undermining the separation of powers doctrine by creating these departments and agencies, and the president then thinks he can legislate on top of Congress, this is the problem. And so what this does, this one section, any regulation, rule, fiat that has a burden of over $100 million must go back to Congress, and Congress must address it. Here's how I do it. Section 3. This committee shall consist of 7 members of the House of Representatives, 4 chosen by the Speaker, 3 chosen by the Minority Leader. 7 members of the Senate, 4 chosen by the Majority Leader, 3 chosen by the Minority Leader. No member shall serve on the committee beyond a 3-year term. Section 4. The committee shall vote no later than 6 months from the date of the submission of the regulation to the committee. And the committee shall make no change to the regulation, either approving or disapproving the regulation by majority vote as submitted. Well, what if there's a tie vote or they don't vote at all? Well, if that happens over a period of 6 months, it's a tie vote or they don't act, then the regulation is automatically disapproved. Now, what if Congress accepts the regulation, as this Congress likely would? Mark, what's the point? Mark, what's the point? Well, guess what? Under another proposed amendment, the states, 3/5 of the states, have the power to override a federal statute or federal regulation. 3/5 of the state. You interested in hearing about this? I'm going to touch on it. I can't go into detail with all this. I'm going to touch on it because we need to be as resolute as they are. I'll be right back.
Back to the best of Mark Levin.
Mark Levin, the most popular conservative author in America. Call in to the Mark Levin Show now at 877-381-3811.
You know, folks, the state convention process, if we generate enough interest in this after spending a significant period of time discussing it, explaining it, you, the Paul and Paulette Reveres, passing the word, they will fear us. They will fear our potential in Washington, in the ruling class. There's nothing to stop us from demanding an appropriate time when they really do fear us, that the Congress itself introduce these amendments. We must not rely on that. But the point is the possibilities are enormous. We now have a president who doesn't give a damn what the Constitution says, who rules more and more by executive fiat and threatens to do it more, and a Supreme Court that upholds it. It's long past time to confront this. And we can do this from the bottom up at the state levels. Mark, I'm from a blue state. I get it. It takes time. It takes time. And the closer we get, the more nervous they'll get. And the closer we get, potentially the more receptive they'll get. But receptive or not, your founding fathers, your Constitution provides recourse. Remember what I just read to you earlier in the hour from this activist, Lizette Escobedo, with the group My Familia Vota. Our groups on the ground are seeing this as a new challenge, and when you get a new challenge, you just need to turn up the heat. I'm not opposed to going to town hall events with members of Congress. I'm not opposed to rallies in the least. I'm not opposed to emailing and sending letters. But I'm also not opposed to using the Constitution to save the Constitution, to using the Constitution to restore the Republic. We need to get excited about this. We need to celebrate this. We need to do everything we can. If we just inform ourselves and talk to others about it, that's better than what's going on today. Article 5 of the Constitution. This is it, folks, right here. This is what you and I, need to become experts on. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, not a constitutional convention, a convention for proposing amendments, just as Congress proposes amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states or by conventions in 3/4 thereof. Obama, the activists on the court are amending our Constitution and rewriting it every damn week. And when I sit here and propose using the constitutional process, it's consoled. That's radical. Oh, my goodness, what's that all about? We need to steamroller these people. Now, let me get back to the point. Let's say Obama, through Homeland Security, imposes his will on us because they have to write regulations and rules and issue them. Even though he does it by fiat, they still have to institute it. So they're still required to do that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if Congress and the President are working together in defiance of the people to evade the Constitution, then we need to do something about it. We can rally. We can vote in Republican primaries. I'm all for it. But we can do something more. That's this convention process. We need to regularize this. We need to universalize this. That is, we need to make it part of the common parlance. Because it's what they are doing, the statists. It's what they are doing that is radical. That's defiant. They are nullifying our Constitution. So one of these amendments that I've crafted would address the situation that I've been talking about for the last several minutes. An amendment to grant the states authority to check Congress and the bureaucracy. Section 1. There shall be a minimum of 30 days between the engrossing of a bill or resolution, including amendments, and its final passage by the House of Representatives or the Senate of the United States. During the engrossment period, the bill or resolution shall be placed on the public record, and there shall be no changes to the final bill or resolution. So, this addresses Thomas Jefferson's warning, which was prescient. You want to write a 2,700-page Obamacare bill? Well, you can write it. But then for 30 days, you can't touch it. We, the people, get to look at it. That's number one. So no more 3-day, 4-day ram through in the middle of the night legislation. Now that can be overridden by two-thirds vote of both members, of both houses of Congress. The thinking is in case there's an act of war or something of that sort. But two-thirds vote is difficult. Now listen to this, Section 3. Upon 3/5 vote of the state legislatures, that is 30 states, the states may override a federal statute. 3/5 vote. Upon 3/5 vote of the state legislatures, the states may override executive branch regulations exceeding the economic burden of $100 million after said regulations have been approved by this Congressional Delegation Oversight Committee I talked about earlier. So the states will have the power, 30 of them, to override a statute or a presidential fiat or federal regulation, if you will, if it has an economic burden exceeding $100 million. And that's most of them. Section 5, ladies and gentlemen, I run Landmark Legal Foundation. I consider it the leanest, meanest, most effective conservative legal foundation in America. And there are many, but Landmark is superb. But with my litigation background, I figure, what are they going to do? Go to court and overturn this amendment? So Section 5. The state's override, that is 3/5 of the state, shall not be the subject of litigation or review in any federal or state court, or oversight or interference by Congress or the President. Section 6. Doing exactly what the publisher asked me not to do. Who cares? The state's override authority must be exercised no later than 24 months from the date the President has signed the statute into law or the regulation, a final regulation has been approved, after which the states are prohibited from exercising the override. So there's some kind of resolution, ultimate resolution. So, folks, I have drafted these amendments, and there's many more, to give you encouragement, to breathe life into a way of thinking that was common to the framers of the Constitution, but is uncommon today. I'm trying to break through this box in which so many of us, constitutional conservatives included, keep banging our heads against the wall, looking at this in the wrong dimension. The Second Amendment process in Article 5 of the Constitution, I promise you, is what the central authorities, what the ruling class, what their media mouthpieces, their academic experts, this is what they fear. Keep something in mind. The concentration of power in Washington, the consolidation of government in Washington, is the antithesis to constitutional republicanism. It is the tyranny that the framers feared. It is the tyranny that they sought to prevent with your Constitution. It is the states that serve as the buffer between we, the people, each of us individually and together, and the federal government. The next time you hear a conservative or a pseudo-conservative say, how can you love your country and hate your government? The answer is, how can you love your country and hate your Constitution? Because it's slipping away. It's slipping away. And if you think that somebody in Washington, D.C., some group, some party, some lobbyist, is going to change this, you're wrong. Congress is not going to fix Congress. Congress is out of control. The president is not going to limit his power. The president is out of control. The Supreme Court is not going to limit its power. The Supreme Court is out of control. Over 100 years ago, Woodrow Wilson, the leading progressive of his era, made absolutely clear that the way to the promised land, where the government would reorganize society, where the government would reshape individuals, where your free will would be conquered. The way to accomplish that, said this racist anti-Semite, is to destroy the Constitution. And the way you destroy the Constitution, he believed, was exactly what the framers feared. Consolidating and concentrating power in Washington, D.C. in the federal government. Eliminating the states so that the federal government has direct shot at the individual with nothing in between to protect you. And what I'm saying is, reclaim your heritage. Take back our country. Stand up for what is ours. I am not intending to be a leader. I'm not intending to lead a movement. I don't even have the energy for that anymore. I am trying to provide the intellectual scholarship, the substance, the arguments. I'm trying to make the case to millions of you who in your own families, at your workplace, in your own communities can make a difference just by informing people that there is recourse when the Supreme Court tries to define marriage, that there is recourse when a president of the United States seeks to impose his will when it comes to our immigration laws, that there is recourse when Congress passes a law like Obamacare that is so utterly unconstitutional. But it won't happen tomorrow. But it won't ever happen if we don't take a first step. Once more, this woman, Lizette Escobedo, with my familia vota, who is pushing for no borders, who's pushing for illegal aliens, who will not take no for an answer. Quote, our groups on the ground are seeing this as a new challenge. That is, if Congress doesn't pass what she wants. Pushing the president to do so by fiat. And she said, and when you get a new challenge, you just need to turn up the heat. Well, baby, let me tell you something. It's time for we the people to turn up the heat. It's time to embrace your Constitution. It's time to take back your country. It's time to draw a line in the sand. That's the case I want to make to you. That's the case I'll be making to you for the weeks ahead. And in a more fulsome way, starting next week when my book comes out, The Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic. Now, I want to tell you about Goldline. We're currently in an economic rut. Unemployment rates are still high and growth is sluggish. The economy is sketchy at best. And I'm quite certain Obamacare isn't going to make things any better. Now, will you be prepared if our economy collapses one day under the weight of government debt and inflation? With gold and silver at 2-year lows, now is the time to consider diversifying your portfolio with a tangible asset that has survived economic catastrophes. With Goldline's two-way price guarantee program, if the price of your qualifying purchase drops, you can call Goldline to reprice it at the lower price. And if the price of your qualifying purchase goes up, you can buy more at the original price. Either way, Goldline has you covered. So call Goldline right now, the only precious metals company that I use, to learn more about how you can qualify to receive this limited time special. And for a limited time, when you call Goldline for its free investor kit and mention that I, Mark Levin, sent you, Goldline will include a free commemorative medal with Ben Franklin on one side, Independence Hall on the other side, while they last. And you'll also get the free investor kit. So please call Goldline now, 1-877-365-2646. Read Goldline's important risk information to see if buying precious metals is right for you. That's 1-877-365-2646, 1-877-365-COIN, 1-877-365-COIN.
Mark Levin. You're listening to the best of the Mark Levin Show.
Here's an example. If you think Eric Cantor stands for anything, let me tell you. That guy is a bowl of grits. That's what he is. Robert Costa, National Review Online. As the fall's fiscal drama nears, a group of conservative lawmakers are urging Republican leaders to use Obamacare as a bargaining chip. Behind the scenes, they're warning Speaker Boehner and Senate Minority Leader McConnell that unless the president's signature law is defunded, they won't support a continuing resolution to fund the federal government. And the debate has caused tension in the ranks since many Republicans are uncomfortable with talk of a shutdown. Speaking with National Review Online Friday, House Majority Leader Eric Cantor clarified the House's strategy, quote, "Nobody's advocating a government shutdown," unquote. He also threw a little cold water on the defund or shutdown rallying cry. Quote, "In order to avoid a government shutdown, we need 60 votes in the Senate and 218 votes in the House to pass a continuing resolution. To get 60 votes in the Senate, you need at least 14 Democrats to join Republicans and pass a CR that defunds Obamacare. Right now, I'm not aware of a single Democrat in the Senate who would join us." Now, first of all, isn't that interesting? Haven't we been hearing for weeks now that you can't defund Obamacare with this vote? Now, Cantor's saying you can, but we don't have the votes. So the French Republicans can't even decide what kind of retreat to have. But here's the point, folks. If Cantor and Boehner and all the consultant class, Rove, and all the ex-Bushies writing here and there had gotten behind this from day one, and if there was a full frontal assault without all the undermining and backstabbing by the French Republicans, we may have gotten a few Democrat votes. But when they already see the French Republicans surrendering, trashing the conservatives who are standing up to this, you're never going to get any Democrat votes. Are you, Mr. Cantor? I'm fed up with Mr. Cantor because Mr. Cantor can't deliver, and he doesn't even want to deliver. So there's got to be another course, and there is another course. It's called bypassing Mr. Cantor and all the rest of them. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin. This is the best of Mark Levin.
Hello, my friends. This is Hour 2. I'm Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. We will be taking some calls this hour. Don't worry. Look at the Drudge Report. Look what's happening to your country. Food stamp use rises. It's still rising. We talked about this about a month ago. Look at this headline. Update. HUD proposes plans to racially, economically integrate neighborhoods. Folks, do you want to be devoured by the federal government? Because that's what's happening. We're being devoured by the federal government. Our livelihoods, our way of life, our communities, nothing's off limits anymore. And we seem helpless or impotent to do anything about it, don't we? Here's another headline, Drudge Report. Cantor breaks with Cruz, Rubio over shutdown. The Republicans are scattered because the French Republicans are undermining the conservatives. The administration is marching along. You can hear the heavy boots on the brick-laden streets. HUD proposes plan to racially and economically integrate neighborhoods. Where the hell does that come from? I've been talking about this. I'll let the other hosts wait till it happens. They're not very future-looking. I will tell you that this battle over the continuing resolution and then in November, the debt ceiling, they're going to be further evidence of the ascendancy of the utopian statists and the incompetence and cowardice of the opposition. That is in Washington. And so this is the state of play right now. health rates to soar in Ohio and Florida because of Obamacare, as they are soaring in California and every other state in the union? What can we do about it? Congress passed it. Obama signed it. The Supreme Court upheld it. And you know what's funny? Congress passed it. Obama signed it. The Supreme Court upheld it. And it's unconstitutional. This is the problem. This is the problem. And they've been fighting for government-run, top-down health care for a century. And they got it. And by the way, they're still not happy. And so they'll adjust it more, and it'll become increasingly more coercive and inefficient and destructive and miserable. Because that's the nature of the beast that is the federal government. Hey, you don't love it? No, I detest it. And I never thought I'd see the Russians say this about an American administration. But the Russian minister tells the U.S. to behave like grown-ups. I agree with the Russian minister, and I hate the Russian government. And yet he speaks the truth about Obama and the rest of that administration. So this is the state we're in. Here's Obama today. These press conferences are extremely painful because they're not really press conferences. The Praetorian press, or the Praetorian Guard press, as I call it, a few questions, real questions slipped in. Most of them didn't. That is, most of them didn't ask serious questions. The question that I said that everybody wants an answer to, what was Obama doing those 8.5 hours after we were attacked at Benghazi, none of them asked. I was hoping Major Garrett would ask, and then I would have increased his rank to General Garrett, Mr. Producer. I can do that on my own. What the hell? By the way, while I'm on this subject, a dear, dear friend of mine, hope I don't get him in trouble, was just promoted from lieutenant colonel to colonel in the Army. And the ceremony was today, and it was an enormous honor of mine to participate in that ceremony. So I want to salute my dear friend, great patriot, servant of the nation, Charlie Sizemore, and his wonderful wife, Vanessa. They're dear, dear friends of ours. And there were other wonderful people there, too. So I just want to thank him and salute him. Now, I want you to listen to some, listen, I know it's like waterboarding, I know it's like torture, but I need to make some points, and we need to listen just to a little, Obama, okay? We'll do a little bit, then you'll have the whole weekend free, because as you know, the government's already shut down. It's 7:12, what time is it on the East Coast here? It's 7:12 p.m. Eastern Time, which means the federal government has shut down, officially. It actually shut down, let's see, Friday afternoon, probably 3:30, 4 p.m. And it'll be open again, at some time in the morning on Monday. And you won't feel a thing. Essential personnel will still be in place. That is the military and law enforcement, intelligence, and so forth. So you don't have to worry about that. We love our weekends, don't we? And yet the government shut down. So the government, as I speak, is shut down. You feeling anything, Mr. Producer? You feeling anything, Mr. Call Screener? Just hungry, exactly. Well, maybe we have a food stamp for you. They're not even stamps anymore. They're credit cards. How about you folks out there? In your cars? Still in your offices? In your homes? The government shut down. Do you feel anything? Wait a minute, what am I going to do? I don't know how to crap. I don't know how to eat. You don't feel a thing, do you? No. In fact, you're happy. It's Friday evening. Maybe you're going out to dinner. Maybe you're going to go bowling, go to a Little League game. Whatever. You're going to relax. You're going to be thinking about Saturday, and then Saturday thinking about Sunday, and then Sunday, oh, my God, I got to go back to work. Anyway, the point is, the weekends are almost liberating. It's like, gosh, I'm free. Congress is out of town. The Supreme Court's out of town. Obama's taken off for Martha's Vineyard. I think we should move the White House to Martha's Vineyard. The guy loves it. Move it to Martha's Vineyard with just one deal. One deal. He has to stay there for 6 months out of the year and not sign a damn thing. But that won't work. But the weekends are liberating. The holidays are liberating. And the government's not even functioning except for essential personnel. And we feel great. We just want to extend that to some of the other days of the week. But then Cantor will be all over TV on the weekend shows. We can't shut the government down. It is shut down, you idiot, as you speak. And by the way, does he have a hairpiece? I've been debating with myself. I've said myself, does Cantor have a hairpiece? Not like I'm obsessing on it, but when I see him on TV, I wonder. What do you think, Mr. Producer? Now, it's a really good one if it is. Well, if I'm wondering if it is, it can't be that good. Good point. There I go. Trumped you. All right, anyway, circling back, I want you to listen to this. Here's Obama. Let's get cut one ready. In the Castro-like press conference today. Go.
I met a young man today on a bill signing I was doing with the student loan bill who came up to me and said, thank you. He couldn't have been more than 25, 26 years old. Thank you. I have cancer. Thanks to the Affordable Care Act, working with the California program, I was able to get health care, and I'm now in remission.
What? How long has this Affordable Care Act actually been implemented? Fully, it hasn't been fully implemented. So thanks to the Affordable Care Act working with the California program, he got health care, now he's in remission. What does any of that mean? Well, what was it about the Affordable Care Act and the California program that got him health care that caused his cancer to be in remission? Yellow, yellow, yellow. Seriously. This is an absurdity. But that won't stop Obama. How many people has Obama met who've lost their jobs as a result of Obamacare because small businesses, medium businesses, large businesses have laid people off in anticipation of the enormous cost, who have really no health care, I suppose they have to rely on Medicaid? How many of those people got the health care they needed who had cancer and now it's in remission? Maybe 60 Minutes will do a show on that. Maybe not. Maybe it'll do another show, as I said, on Michelle Obama's organic garden. And then Obama said this. Cut 2, go.
I think the really interesting question is...
Hold on, stop there. Let's see. Rewind that, please. He's got a really interesting question, which means he's about to attack the Republicans. Go ahead.
I think the really interesting question is why it is that my friends in the other party
Republicans
have made the idea of preventing these people from getting health care their holy grail, their number one priority. The one unifying principle in the Republican Party at the moment is making sure that 30 million people don't have health care.
Oh, you're such a knucklehead. Oh, what a knucklehead. Yes, that's what unifies Republicans, making sure that 30 million people don't get health care. That's right. And yet under Obamacare, 30 million people won't get health care. He signed it. They wrote it. Democrats passed it. So who is it that doesn't want 30 million people to get health care? Let me educate you, Mr. President, although I think you're so ideologically blind to things it won't matter. What some of us support is opening this system wide open. Enormous competition, where people can start insurance companies or insurance companies can break into smaller insurance companies or whatever they wish to do to create all kinds of insurance plans. Catastrophic, much more minimalistic, if you will. Plans for everyone and anyone. That's what we support. It's called capitalism. You said the other day, hey, I support free market capitalism, and they call me a socialist, because you are. If not worse. Well, what if you can't afford health care? Well, ladies and gentlemen, under Obamacare, a lot of people can't afford health care. Can they? No, they can't. We had the greatest health care system on the face of the earth. Get ready. This is going to scare the hell out of you. Prior to Franklin Roosevelt. It was easy to see a doctor, pay a few dollars, get a checkup, and so forth. Today the system is a mess. It's a disaster with layer and layer of federal and state regulations. All kinds of people intervening, having nothing to do with the quality of medical care, none whatsoever. All kinds of overlords and overseers. Everybody taking a little piece of the action, particularly the government. It's not a question of having some rules and regulations, because God knows we have that. It's a question of having some free enterprise and free market activity. Apparently we're not allowed to do that. You see, folks, if you believe in free market capitalism, why wouldn't you believe in it when it comes to health care? If you believe in it when it comes to buying toasters, why don't you believe in it in life and death matters? Be much more successful that way, wouldn't we? No, we don't support 30 million people being without health care, Mr. President. That's on you. We support everybody having an opportunity to get a job, to get health care, you know, like before you were president. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin. You're listening to the best of the Mark Levin Show.
I told you it wouldn't be too painful. I've got a long, long list of Obama clips here that the boys put together from his Castro-like press conference today. And I'm not playing anymore. However, Harry Reid, I posted on my social sites something that I'm sorry to tell you this, and I'm sorry to speak this way, but Harry Reid is a lowlife. This guy's the Senate Majority Leader. The way he talks about citizens who are involved in the Tea Party, he's just a loathsome POS. Let me put it to you that way. You know what that means, Mr. Producer? He really is. Here he is, thanks to our buddy at the Rights Group, Brian, the Rights Scoop. Here's Harry Reid today, cut 9, go.
See, I don't need a lot of Republicans to help me, and that's why I so admire John McCain. John McCain and I came to the House together 31 years ago. We came to the Senate together at the same time. And he and I have fought over the years, but we're also very, very good friends. And he broke away from the pack. He said, in effect, we have to get some things done. So he doesn't control the Republican caucus, but he controls...
Stop a sec. Doesn't this guy sound like... How can I put this? Doesn't he sound like somebody you'd want to keep your kids away from? Can I put it that way, Mr. Producer? Yeah, creepy. He sounds creepy. Almost dirty. Go ahead.
10 people there, that's all I needed. And we were able to get a lot of things done. We nominated scores. We confirmed scores of nominees. And because of him, we were able to get immigration reform done. We've been able to do some things, but it's because of John McCain breaking away from this ideological, anarchy-driven Tea Party that has so much control over the Republicans in Congress.
See, folks, I want to crush this guy politically. I want to crush this entire ruling class. I want to crush this entire sleazy operation operating outside the Constitution. Look how this man talks about you. You're anarchy-driven. You're ideological anarchy-driven. When you embrace the Constitution, look at John McCain and how he's sold out, how much praise is heaped upon him by this detestable lowlife. That's right. That's what I called you. What are you going to do about it? I'll be right back.
Now, back to the best of Mark Levin. This is the show the New York Times is afraid of. Mark Levin. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
So they're going to open Sunday most of the embassies that they closed. So in 1 week's time, I guess the threat went away. I could have sworn Peter King said, and others, that this is the greatest threat to this country since before 9/11. Now, folks, I never understood that comment. They closed the embassies. What was it, about 20 of them? 19, something like that? How is that the greatest threat to our country since 9/11, when 9/11 was a direct strike on the heart of New York City, at the Pentagon, and the flight that was taken down by the heroes in central Pennsylvania? How would closing down embassies, the threat to these embassies, be the greatest threat since 9/11? It never made any sense to me, as I pointed out. But that said, in 1 week's time, they're going to reopen most of them, but for, I think, 2 of them. It's very odd. Very, very odd. And off the president goes to Martha's Vineyard. By the way, there's a couple articles out there. The people of Martha's Vineyard can't stand him. They say, can he vacation somewhere else? Apparently he's not very nice. And they're shutting down all their streets. And, you know, those people pay an awful lot of money for their homes, and others pay an awful lot of money for hotels or to rent homes and so forth. And they don't want their vacation screwed up. A lot of these people go on vacation in August, too. Obama doesn't give a you-know-what. He could care less. He could care less. I mean, it's a small island, relatively speaking. So he'll screw up everybody else's vacation. You know, Mark, that's awfully petty of you. No, it's not in the least. This is how you take the measure of somebody. This is information that's relevant. I haven't taken many calls. I think we'll dive in right here. Mike, Nairville, Indiana, on the great Mark Levin app. If you do not have the Mark Levin app, take a few seconds, ladies and gentlemen. Go on my website, MarkLevinShow.com, the best website in talk radio. Download my app. It's absolutely free, like everything else you can do on my website is absolutely free. Mark Levin app. If you don't have it, you don't have it. It's a takeoff on the bankrupt, or soon-to-be bankrupt, Washington Compost ads of old. Go right ahead, my friend.
God bless you, Mark Levin. I pray Psalm 91 for my personal protection, and I wish you do the same. And against this evil administration, this anti-God, anti-American, anti-Constitution administration, I pray Psalm 52, 58, and my favorite 94. Enough of the religious part. Obamacare is going to take 50% of all the disposable income from Americans. How is this economy going to survive? And then put on top of it, 30 million illegal immigrants?
All right, settle down. Hold on now. Get a hold of yourself. You all right?
Okay. Yes, I'm okay. This is a disaster, and it's not these French Republicans. Let's call these dirty dogs a dirty name. These are the Judas Republicans.
All right. All right, Mike, thank you for your call, my friend. He's fed up. Accurate information or not, he's fed up. I feel his pain, to quote the presidential pervert. I mean, Bill Clinton, the soon-to-be Medal of Freedom winner. Yeah, the Medal of Freedom winner, Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, whose most famous line, Mr. Producer, was, "Kiss it." I wonder if they'll show that up on the big screen at the Kennedy Center when, some guy in a raincoat flapping it open, saying to him, "Here, kiss it." I mean, that's Clinton. Don't yell at me. That's the great Bill Clinton right there, or as I call him, B.J. Bill Jefferson Clinton. I loved it when they asked him about Weiner running in New York, and he said, Hillary and I are staying 100 miles away from that. Why? He's your protege. He just applied a little bit of new technology to what you do, Bill. Let's continue, shall we? Let us go to Jeremy, Dallas, Texas, the great WBAP. Go!
Hey, Mark, Clinton does deserve that Medal of Freedom, first of all, because he freed Willie numerous times. But I am ticked off this regime. I mean, what would the Founding Fathers have thought about all this stuff that others have mentioned? But what would they have done, more importantly? What would they have done about the long trend of abuses from Obamacare to the NDAA to the NSA spying to the IRS to all
I'll tell you what I think they do, and that's why I wrote this book. Some people think they'd start a new revolution. I think they would say, okay, now we got to empower the states again, and this may take a while, but we've got to get on it to collectively, as they used to do, they used to have these compacts to collectively undo this. And there's a number of ways to do it. And by the way, the reason I put these amendments, these proposed amendments in the book, is to give people who read the book an idea on what's possible.
Well,
to encourage people.
That the amendments, and your ideas are great. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to take anything away. But I almost contend that it's almost too late for that. This behemoth has grown so big.
Well, it can't be too late for it because there's no alternative.
The Founding Fathers found an alternative. Maybe a million.
So I'll tell you what. We'll follow you. You're going to arm yourself or something?
I'm sorry?
Are you going to rush the gates?
With pitchforks, sure.
Okay, when are you going to do that so we all know to line up behind you?
Exactly.
But that's my point, Jeremy. I can't take the naysayers. It's too late. I can't do that. Well, what are you going to do? I mean, I'll call the radio show?
Yes.
See my point? We got to do something here, man. It can't be novel. It can't be an abstraction. It can't be outrageous. It's got to be something that's rational and civil and legitimate. And it's right there in the Constitution. And I understand when you're looking at a soft tyranny how difficult this is. But that's exactly why that section of Article 5 is there. George Mason predicted it. He was prescient. He felt the federal government would get oppressive. He wouldn't even sign the Constitution. And he said, look, this is here. 2 days before the end of the Constitutional Convention. He insisted on it. They voted on it. They passed it. He said, this is here in case, and he believed it would, as Madison wrote, the federal government and particularly Congress become oppressive. If there's some other way to do this, I mean, in addition to fighting in the primaries and trying to take over the RNC and this, that, and the, if there's some other way to effectively address what's going on, I'm open to it. I honest to God, I'm open to it. I want to hear it, but I never hear it.
Pitchforks.
All right, thank you. Just don't sit on them. Pitchforks. Well, I mean, we do rally. And what do? You hear this, Harry Reid? Again, I'm not against rallies. I'm not against making our voices heard and our positions known. But I also think if we get this kind of movement going, and we may not, but at first we need to discuss it. We need to have a discussion. We need to advance the argument before you have a movement or anything. That the bigger it grows, the more we raise these points, the more we talk about it and so forth and so on, the more we get their attention and the more they fear us and perhaps respond to us. But even more than that, I believe in the process altogether. And I'm going to tell you who else did. Which Republican president do you think believed in this process? Now, I'll give you a second to think while I'm trying to look up his quote because it's in the end of my book. Which Republican president? Well, I'll tell you which Republican president, Dwight David Eisenhower. Does that surprise you? And I quote him in the end of my book, in the last chapter. The framers, including George Mason, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton, were not alone in their support for the state convention process. And I mention those three men for a reason. Hamilton was one of the most aggressive Federalists. Madison was a Federalist, but considered the father of the Constitution. And George Mason didn't sign the Constitution. And yet, he's the father of the Virginia Declaration of Rights, which was the precursor to our Declaration of Independence. 3 tremendous men. All 3 of them, and more, supported this process. And they weren't alone. But even more, Dwight David Eisenhower, former president, during his commencement address in May 1963 at Defiance College in Ohio, Attorney Russell Kaplan dug this up. He urged the graduating class to help return the rights lost to, this I'm quoting Eisenhower, a distant bureaucracy. He said, quote, through their state legislatures and without regard to the federal government, the people can demand and participate in constitutional conventions. And that's where he's wrong. This is a convention to propose amendments to the Constitution. But okay, in which they can, through their own action, adopt such amendments as can and will reverse any trends they see as fatal to true representative government. That's Eisenhower in 1963. Reagan in 1987 fought Congress to pass a constitutional amendment to send to the states for ratification to balance the federal budget. If only he had succeeded. In August 12, 1987, in a nationally televised speech from the Oval Office, Reagan stated in part, the congressional budget process is neither reliable nor credible. In short, it needs to be fixed. We desperately need the power of a constitutional amendment to help us balance the budget. Over 70% of the American people want such an amendment. They want the federal government to have what 44 states already have, discipline. And if the Congress continues to oppose the wishes of the people by avoiding a vote on our balanced budget amendment, the call for a convention will grow louder. This convention is the Achilles heel of the utopian statists of the governing class. It will be attacked. You watch. If it's attacked at all, first they'll pretend that this is really an outlier, despite the fact that the framers supported it, despite the fact that they drafted the language and voted on it, despite the fact that every state convention endorsed it, despite the fact, moving to the more modern history, that Eisenhower endorsed it, that Reagan, this will be, said to be the ideas of kooks, and yet they're the kooks. They'll say we want to nullify the Constitution, when in fact they've already nullified big chunks of the Constitution. I will not allow them to twist language, to twist events, to accommodate their agenda. Not behind this microphone. That ain't going to happen. Nullification has occurred, ladies and gentlemen, and it's occurred thanks to the statists who've nullified one section of the Constitution after another. And now say, live with it, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Well, I say they're wrong. What do you say? What do you say? I'll be right back.
Mark Levin. Listening to the best of the Mark Levin Show.
I'm going to Mount Vernon tomorrow evening and spend a few hours there. I'm going to check in the bookstore there. Take a look at my father's book, George Washington, The Crossing. It's been on the New York Times bestseller list for 8 weeks in a row. So I want to salute my father and thank you folks too. It's gotten wonderful reviews on Amazon. Wonderful. And if you've enjoyed it, please feel free to leave a positive review on Amazon as well. John, Seattle, Washington, the great KVI. Go.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for being a great patriot.
Well, you too. Thank you.
So this goes back to the press conference today. We have got to stop letting this administration frame the Obamacare discussion the way he did today. The 30 million citizens who do not have health insurance actually want that insurance. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but isn't it true that the majority of those 30 million are young, healthy people who have used their free market discretion and decided they don't want to buy the insurance?
Well, not only are you correct, but you know who he throws into that 30 million? Illegal aliens. So that 30 million isn't American citizens. That 30 million includes 11 million illegal aliens, and the rest, you're exactly right. Not all the rest, but the bulk of the rest are people who choose not to participate.
Right.
Young people, for the most part.
Yeah, they're now coercing those people into buying something they don't want so they can transfer the payments to the less healthy, older.
Exactly right. So the people who need the health care the less are contributing to the system. It's a redistribution away. It's a Ponzi scheme.
We can't let him get away with constantly framing the arguments.
Well, you and I speak up, but the Republicans are, they're all sitting around like they're constipated all the time.
Well, hopefully they're listening today.
Yeah, I doubt it. All right, my friend, thank you for your call. Kenny, Dallas, Texas, the great WBAP. Go.
Thanks so much, Mark. My father spent 22 years in the Air Force. He fought in Korea and in Vietnam against these communists. Wow. And I've asked to speak to you based upon his sacrifice because I have something that I believe is extremely important to tell you. Recently you said that it's the responsibility of your audience to step up and come forward if they have ideas or better ideas, and that's why I'm here. What I'm going to tell you will be very difficult to believe, but I'm asking for the opportunity to prove.
Good Lord. All right, sorry, Kenny, but you agree with me, Mr. Producer? Yeah, I won't comment. Dumped for a reason, not because there's anything personal or he didn't say anything vile, just different. How much time do I have? Tell me in my ear here. Robert, Pensacola, Florida, the great WCOA. Go.
Mark, it's an extremely great honor to talk to you. I'm a nearly 27-year-old constitutionalist conservative, a Tea Party patriot, and we have a lighthouse in Pensacola. It stands 191 feet above sea level. It's our beacon of hope, our light of freedom, just like your voice is over the airways. Now, we're turning up the heat in northwest Florida, the Panhandle. We just went to a meeting this morning with Honorable Jeff Miller, a coffee hour. Unfortunately, I would have liked to have seen 1,000 people there. And we went over, we're on board of what
Hold on. Don't hang up. Unfortunately, the music means I have to cut you off, but I want to carry you over. I want to know what happened at this town hall meeting, and maybe we can encourage other people to do something similar. All right, folks. One more hour left, the power hour, the final hour of the week. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin. This is the best of Mark Levin.
Hello, my friends. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. While the Islamo-Nazis are killing the other Islamo-Nazis, apparently using chemical warfare in Syria. In Egypt, more of the same, the Muslim Brotherhood attacking Coptic Christians, among others. The Egyptian military trying to put them down. In Iran, that Islamo-Nazi regime, busy hanging gays and torturing, raping, and persecuting others in that country who don't comply with their strict ideas. No, this isn't a democracy movement. There never was a democracy movement in the Middle East other than Israel, and there never will be. Because there's no civil society. There's no tolerance. all the things I've written about and talked about, these are the preconditions to a representative or democratic government. You don't just superimpose one on a society. That just shows you the complete naivete of the Bush administration. And all their scribes out there trashing people like Ted Cruz and Rand Paul. Now, something's going on, many of you are aware of it, that is very troubling to me. I remember the days when there were battles within the Republican Party. In 68, 76, and 80, when Ronald Reagan took on the Republican establishment, it got pretty nasty. Because the establishment doesn't want to give up power, doesn't want to loosen its grip on the Republican Party. And that establishment, the Nixon, Ford, Scranton, Rockefeller, on and on and on establishment, is fully in control of the modern Republican Party. It is a throwback to the minority status of the Republican Party. The Republican Party, which had a minority status for decades, one after the other. And it never learns. And the reason is, it's ossified. It's corrupt. I don't mean financially necessarily, but I mean intellectually and politically. You and me, we're concerned about the survival of this nation. They are considered about their own political survival, so they try to play us and manage us and control us. The minute we sent those Tea Party conservatives to the House of Representatives, over 80 of them, John Boehner immediately moved into action to control as many of them as he could, and he controlled a substantial number of them, and still does. But there are a few who won't be controlled, including some in the Senate, including Ted Cruz, one of the real bright lights of the Republican Party. Not Chris Christie, not the same old, but Cruz. Cruz and Paul and others, but I'm focused on Cruz right now, is exciting the base. He's exciting the Republican Party. He's demonstrated that he can beat the establishment, as he did. And the establishment is very powerful in Texas, and they have an enormous amount of money. And the lieutenant governor, a very wealthy man in his own right, been there for years and years and years with a network and connections. The media supported him. And here's Ted Cruz coming out of nowhere. And he wins. What does he win on? Ideas and principles and goals for the nation. Ted Cruz has been under an unrelentless, vicious, vile, poisonous attack by the establishment, including Bush staffers, including Pete Wehner and other people like Jennifer Rubin out of Hollywood and Joe Scarborough out of his mind. People who preach moderation and yet don't practice it when it comes to him. And many other conservatives for that matter. I want you to listen to somebody called Nicole Wallace. She's a former McCain campaign aide. She also has her roots in the Bush Klan. And of course she shows up on the Morning Joe. This is a program that has as its mission the destruction of conservatism and specific individuals such as Ted Cruz. The fact is it doesn't have an audience, so its mission won't be accomplished. But it sheds some light on how these entrenched Republicans, how they think, and why the country simply will not survive unless we bypass them and defeat them. And I want you to keep something in mind also when I play this relatively short clip. Democratic consultants and former aides and so forth, they never talk about members of their own party the way Republican former aides and speechwriters and consultants speak about conservatives in the Republican Party. Never. Let's listen to Nicole Wallace. She's a nobody. But just listen to how she attacks Cruz. She would never, ever say this about any Democrat. And by the way, there's a pattern with this woman. She's done the same to Sarah Palin. Cut 3, go.
The problem with what Ted Cruz is doing is it's intellectually dishonest. And there's a great piece on a Commentary magazine website this morning written by Pete Weiner, who's
Stop. So there's a great piece written by Pete Weiner in Commentary. It's not a great piece. It's a hit piece. I'm sorry, that's a fact. There's nothing great about it. There's nothing intelligent or substantive about it. He disagrees with Cruz, but that's not good enough. Let's start over, cut 3. Hat tip Mediaite. Here she is again on the Morning Schmo. Go.
The problem with what Ted Cruz is doing is it's intellectually dishonest. And there's a great piece on a Commentary magazine website this morning written by Pete Weiner, who's a very thoughtful conservative who wrote speeches for President Bush and did a lot of conservative...
And he was also Rove's aide, and he's also been involved in conservative circles at times and so forth. He's a very bright guy, and he's also very wrong on this. Okay, go ahead.
In the Bush White House. He was also asked at that event, why don't we impeach President Obama? And he said, because we don't have the votes. The true answer, the intellectually honest answer is because he has not committed an impeachable offense.
Stop. Oh, yes, really? Really, Nicole Wallace? Really, Nicole Wallace? Do you understand past impeachment efforts? Do you understand the effort to impeach Nixon? Do you know what high crimes and misdemeanors means? Even George Will, unwittingly, of course, laid out the case. When a president conducts himself as Will and Krauthammer and others have said, although they would distance themselves from the I word, when a president has conducted himself in ways that usurp federal law, usurp the Constitution, suspend federal statutes, violate the Constitution, that's precisely what the impeachment clause is all about, Nicole Wallace. And his answer is correct. We don't have the votes. Otherwise, he should be removed. But he won't be removed. And so the nation will suffer as lawlessness becomes institutionalized. Go ahead, Mr. Producer.
So Ted Cruz is doing a whole lot of fear-mongering, and he's lying to the voters. He's presenting an untruthful case because the reason we're going to lose this debate about defending Obamacare is because we don't occupy the White House. We don't have the ability to pass laws and then sign them. So the best way to win this fight is to elect a Republican president.
Oh, okay. You mean like George W. Bush, who expanded Medicare, expanded the federal role in education, who was the greatest spender in American history until Obama came along? Just elect more Republicans, everybody. That'll fix it. More Republicans like Nicole Wallace and Joe Scarborough alike. That'll fix it, folks. Then we'll get rid of Obamacare, you see. Buffoonish. Absolutely buffoonish. Absolutely ineffective, impotent. And no, Ted Cruz isn't lying and he's not fear-mongering. He's telling the truth, as a matter of fact. A leaderless, gutless, rudderless Republican Party that will continue to lose if it keeps this up, if it continues to listen to people like Nicole Wallace. Here she is, former McCain campaign aide. Did not McCain lose his race for the presidency, Mr. Producer? Now she's on TV giving her expert advice. Now, folks, this shouldn't dispirit you. It should infuriate you. And once you're done being angry about it, it should motivate you. We have a political war to win. Oh, yes, even at the federal level, we have a political war to win. And the first war we need to win is against the Nicole Wallace types, the McCain, Bush, Christie, etc., etc., Nixon, Ford, Rockefeller, Scranton wing of the Republican Party. Reagan had to do it, and he did it. We have to do it too. And I feel we will. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin. You're listening to the best of the Mark Levin Show.
This Nicole Wallace, along with the detestable Steve Schmidt, another loser, they both are former John McLean staffers who betrayed Sarah Palin, who they trash endlessly. This Nicole Wallace's husband, Mark Wallace, another arrogant operator, was Bush's deputy campaign manager under Ken Melman in 2004. And so they trash conservatives. That's what they do. I mean, real principled conservatives, while pretending to be that. See, just elect more Republicans. That'll fix it. Folks, this isn't a game. This isn't we have an R on our hat, they have a D on their hat. This isn't a game. I'll give you another example. And it strikes home, and I'm going to address all of these that come up. In my book, The Liberty Amendments, I spend some time concisely explaining why I wrote the book. I spend some time concisely explaining why I was originally skeptical about the state amendment through the convention process, but why I'm now a strict adherent to it. And I lay it out. I also explain that you really can't have a runaway convention. The states choose the delegates, state legislatures do, delegates that they want representing them, and 3/4 of the states have to ratify these amendments just as they would with a Congress. Nobody ever talks about a runaway Congress proposing endless numbers of amendments that somehow 3/4 of the states are going to rubber stamp. And yet this is what we get when we talk about a state convention. Why? Because so many Republicans and, frankly, so many conservatives are very comfortable with what's going on. They really are. In Ricochet, it's a little website. It's not all that widely read, but it's there, and I've got a few friends who write over there. There's a fellow called Peter Meza. I have no idea who he is. So he puts a post up there. I'm just telling you what we're dealing with and what we're up against. Mark Levin's new book, The Liberty Amendments, presents proposed new amendments to the U.S. Constitution that will, in his view, restore the American Republic. I wonder what a set of proposed amendments to the Constitution that liberals would prefer would look like. Now, this is so knee-jerk and anticipated that I can barely wait to respond to it. But first, I got to tell you what he writes. Here's some examples. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution are hereby repealed. Propose FDR's second Bill of Rights as a new set of amendments. Propose a mirror set of anti-liberty amendments to counteract Levin's set, and it goes on. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at the first 10 amendments. The First Amendment is hanging by a thread. The Second Amendment has, in fact, been diluted and is under constant assault. The Fourth and Fifth Amendments have been diluted and are under constant assault. The Ninth Amendment is never even referenced because, as far as the federal government is concerned, it doesn't even exist. And the 10th Amendment, you're laughed out of court when you raise it. Every now and then they'll take a peek at it. But the 10th Amendment was really an exclamation mark behind the whole notion of federalism and state sovereignty, which barely exists today. So we don't need an amendment to get rid of the first 10 amendments because the federal government, without an amendment at all, through the actions of Congress and the president and the bureaucracy and the decisions of the courts, have already been doing this. Then he says, propose FDR's second Bill of Rights as a new set of amendments. I've written about that in 2 prior books. The second Bill of Rights is an entire economic socialist plan that is being instituted. National health care, government control of education, and on and on and on. Does the man even know what the Second Bill of Rights is? And it goes on. An amendment to restrict campaign speech. Does he know that George Bush, Nicole Wallace's hero, signed the McCain-Feingold bill even though he said it was unconstitutional? And yet we still have some very strict restrictions on political speech in this nation, despite the Citizens United decision. So what am I saying? I'm saying, folks, that the federal government that this guy says he's concerned about, and the Constitution and the amendments that he obviously pretends to be concerned about, are already under assault and are honored in the breach. Now, what of this notion of a takeover of the convention by the left, and suddenly the Constitution is rewritten? I address that in the book time and time and time again, which he has not read, but which I will discuss very briefly as soon as I return.
Back to the best of Mark Levin. This is the Octagon of Talk Radio. The Mark Levin Show. Call in now at 877-381-3811.
There are 27, according to Wikipedia, Republican-controlled legislatures as I speak. 27 out of 50. 27 out of 50. The National Republicans can't win the Senate. The National Republicans can only win the House with we, the conservative constitutionalists and Tea Party, supporting them. The National Republicans nominate one loser after another. But in the state legislatures, according to Wikipedia, as of now, the Republicans control 27 of them. 34 are required to call for a convention of the states to propose amendments. They can't amend the Constitution on their own. You need 3/4 of the states for that. So this is a process, and it won't be easy. It's daunting. But when some jerk posts something, look at all these amendments I have, you have to talk about the state convention process first. The reason that a state convention is called, the impetus for it, why states would seek it. They're not going to send delegates there willy-nilly to throw out the Constitution. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, what's happening at the national level with the federal government? You see, the fact that I bring up the Constitution, these people cringe. They embrace the post-constitutional activities of the federal government. I'm talking about the Republicans in Washington. These Republicans, like Peter Meza, they have no agenda. They provide no opposition. And there's no advancement. Some claim to support federalism. Well, the state convention process is quintessential federalism. You bypass the federal government, and the states are operating to amend the federal Constitution, so they're attacking federalism. In fact, they're rejecting self-government. They fear it. They prefer top-down authoritarianism, apparently, because that's what we're getting. That's what we're getting. And it's interesting, at no point in his little post on Ricochet does he talk about the current state of the Constitution? Does he talk about the current state of what Washington is doing? That's the whole impetus for this. Which is why I go to great lengths to explain it in the book for those who will read. This website's supposed to attract intellectuals. Apparently not so in many cases. Knee-jerk, uninformed, didn't read the book. Now, we're not talking about a popular vote. or majoritarianism or anything of the sort. Each state legislature or a convention convened by a state legislature, just as with the other amendment process where Congress proposed amendments, gets one vote. One vote. Do you think 12 red states would vote to throw out the Bill of Rights? Do you think 12 red states would vote to adopt FDR's socialist second Bill of Rights, ladies and gentlemen? Do you think 12 red states would vote to eviscerate free speech? Do you think 12 red states, 13 red states would do anything of the sort? Of course not. So this is nothing more than fear-mongering. This is nothing more than defeatism. So what are the problems with this guy's post? Number one, there's no discussion about what actually exists today. The post-constitutional activities of the federal government, and that it's getting more aggressive in the way it conducts itself. I mean, what do we need an example, a modern example bigger than Obamacare? So he would just surrender to it. Or as Nicole Wallace would say, just elect more Republicans. So the Bill of Rights are under attack today. Not by the states, by the federal government. The second Bill of Rights, FDR's socialist program, is being instituted, not by the states collectively on the people, even though some states individually. No, the federal government is. Campaign speech is under attack. McCain-Feingold. McCain was the Republican nominee. George Bush signed that law, even though it was unconstitutional. A Republican nominee for president was involved in proposing it. A Republican president signed it into law. The Supreme Court curtailed it. Just elect more Republicans, ladies and gentlemen. That'll fix it. That'll fix it. Now, I decided to, again, use this guy as a foil because it's a fairly stupid post. But the point is, serious, substantive engagement on this is what I look forward to. And I think it's going to get harder and harder to get. We shall see. But yes, we're going to defend conservatives at the national level who are real conservatives, who are serious about taking on what's taking place, who understand that you need to move the nation, you have to move the argument, and that the perfect storm doesn't always exist. It's not easy, but it's tough. You got to take some chances, particularly when your efforts are to save the nation. It's just that some people don't think we're in dire straits. The prior administration, the prior officials of the administration, why would they? What the hell did they do to fix it? Nothing. Nothing. What the hell are they going to do to fix it? Nothing. They're not going to do anything. It's just amazing. And the great thing about this debate now, quite frankly, the great thing that this book and you, my beloved audience, what we're doing now is we're smoking this out. We're fleshing it out. And that's very, very important. And I want to tell you something that's going to upset these people to no end. And that's good. And I think put a smile on most of your faces, because I have you to thank. The Liberty Amendments, restoring the American Republic. Restoring the American Republic. See, these folks don't think anything needs to be restored because they're ignorant. The Liberty Amendments will debut on the New York Times list, published on September 1st as number 1 in the nation of all books, nonfiction, hardcover. Number 1 in the nation, all books, ebook. Number 1 in the nation, all books combined, hardcover and ebook. All 3 nonfiction lists, number 1, it will debut. It will be published in the New York Times on September 1st. They will be furious, but so what? And that's thanks to you. You don't have to agree with everything I've written. You don't have to agree with amendments that I'm suggesting. As I said, I don't have unassailable knowledge. These are reforms that I'm arguing for. It may need some adjustment based on our heritage, based on our history, based on what the framers intended, and also based on the experience we're going through right now. There may be other ideas. Great. But this is an agenda that is intended to breathe life back into the Constitution and to restore the constitutional republic. And these other Republicans and this guy, Peter Meza at Ricochet, what is it that they suggest? Nothing. Just put up a cheap, childish post. Hey, look at this, guys. Or over at Media Matters, put a list of horribles that are going to occur. Let me tell you something, folks. The list of horribles are occurring. People are losing their jobs over Obamacare, as an example. One example. People are losing their health care over Obamacare. And the Republican Party does nothing. Whoop. Let me put a footnote there. The Republican Party attacks the conservatives within the Republican Party who are trying to do something. Yes, this is a debate we need to have, not only within the Republican Party, but outside the Republican Party, not only among Republicans, but among Americans. If you don't think we're facing perilous times, then none of this will interest you. Go about your business. But if you listen to this show, I know you think differently. And I can see the response to the book. I know you think differently. And if there's a better plan, then let's hear it now, right now, because we don't have time to piddle around. These people who navel gaze, who debate among themselves, who think that just by writing a column or a cheap shot or whatever, that they've accomplished something. They've accomplished nothing. Zero. And they don't get out among the people. You, me, we get to talk to each other every day. They talk to themselves. They conspire among themselves. They're cloistered. There's a reason why Congress has a 12, 13, 14% rating. There's a reason why Obama's ratings are almost at 40%. There's a reason why the Supreme Court's ratings are dropping. There's a reason why people are disgusted with Washington, disgusted with the bureaucracy. There's a reason why there's a disconnect. And it's getting increasingly more dangerous and unhealthy for a society. Writing vicious attacks on Ted Cruz, repeating them on MSNBC, that gets us nowhere. And they need to be responded to from now on. And I tell my fellow conservatives in broadcast media, in written media, on websites and so forth, it's time to point these people out and respond to them. It's time. Because they seek to pick us off one by one. Not while I'm behind this microphone. All right, folks, let's take a little break. 2 Connecticut women answering a job posting met with a man claiming to be hiring for a national company. They paid the man $40 and filled out job applications, giving up their Social Security numbers, addresses, and birth dates. And after several days of not hearing back from the man, they called police. Well, authorities suspect that the personal information may be used for identity theft. Identity thieves are shrewd, and they're targeting your checking and savings accounts, and they're after your cash and your retirement. Identity theft has become such a serious and complex crime, you simply can't fight it alone. I trust LifeLock Ultimate to help protect my identity and my bank accounts and those of my parents from takeover fraud. LifeLock can't protect you or your bank accounts, however, if you're not a member. So please visit lifelock.com/Levin/LEVIN for details and my special 10% discount. Or just call and use promo code Levin to get the special 10% discount. Here's the number. 1-800-457-LOCK. 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 Network does not cover all transactions, and scope may vary.
Mark Levin. You're listening to the best of the Mark Levin Show.
Well, I came out of the bunker. I want to thank Sean Hannity and Neil Cavuto and my buddy Eric Bolling and at the Fox News Channel. Now I'm going back to the bunker. I want to thank you folks who showed up in New York and New Jersey for the book signing. I've got 2 left. One at Tyson's Corner, Virginia, this Saturday at Barnes & Noble. And then the final book signing on September 7th at the Reagan Library. Then I'm done signing, and I'm back in the bunker. Appearing from time to time, but not as much. I say what I have to say behind the microphone. That's what I do. That's my passion. Now, folks, what I'm trying to convey when I read these things is how thin and superficial the opposition is intellectually. They're all about cheap shots or dispiriting or some other agenda, or they're perfectly happy with the state of affairs. They just want to get back in office, or I don't know. Doesn't really matter to me. I've never written comments about a book that I haven't read. I just think it's ridiculous. So when somebody writes comments about a book they haven't read, it's a cheap shot. Now, when somebody has written comments about a book they have read, then that's potentially a worthy discussion. Potentially. The problem most of these critics have is they have no plan. They have no alternative. We have a plan. It's called the Constitution. We have an alternative. It's called the state legislatures. They have nothing. They offer us nothing. Just elect more Republicans. It doesn't matter who they are. It could be Mike Castle of Delaware, Chris Christie of New Jersey. Doesn't matter. Just keep electing Republicans. And you have. And what do you have for it? Well, you've got massive debt, a massive bureaucracy, an out-of-control presidency, an out-of-control Supreme Court, and an out-of-control Congress. Just keep electing Republicans. Well, you have. You elected Nixon. He gave you the EPA and OSHA and affirmative action and 1,000 other things. And he was followed by Gerald Ford, not elected. But he's your quintessential establishment Republican, and this is the sort of guy that they like. You elected George H.W. Bush in the Reagan third term, and what did you get? A massive expansion of the government. He wouldn't even fight. Then you laid down the law, and you elected Gingrich and the Republicans in the House, and you got some things. Almost a balanced budget, workfare and welfare. I mean, some of the things that Clinton did that he takes credit for now, Clinton didn't do it because he wanted to. He did it because conservatives forced it. Then you elected George W. Bush. He lost the popular vote, but he won the Electoral College vote. He is a legitimate president in his first term. And he won the popular vote in the second term. But he's not going to be known for cutting government or trying to cut government. He didn't veto any budgets or spending bills. He didn't even try. They massively expanded the federal government. It was bipartisan. In fact, we controlled the Senate and the House and the presidency for 6 years. As I said yesterday, can you imagine if the Democrats controlled the presidency, the Senate, and the House for 6 years? Do you know how this country would be turned inside out? They controlled it for 2 years, and they turned it inside out. We control it for 6 years, and we're taking steps backwards every single time. And these are the people telling us that Ted Cruz is dangerous and he's a radical. And these are the people telling us, no, 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 don't look at the Constitution. The world started with the New Deal. Meanwhile, the spending is spiraling out of control every day. It's not even discussed anymore. The size and breadth of the federal bureaucracy and its ubiquitous reach into damn near everything we do. What's their plan for it? There is no plan for it. Well, we have a plan. It's in the Constitution, in the Liberty Amendment. We salute our brave soldiers, firefighters, police officers, and our emergency personnel. God bless you all. God bless you, my beloved audience.